Good morning, everyone. I'm Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey. I am on behalf of 58 of Florida's 67 sheriffs. I'm honored to stand today beside the 46th governor of the great state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a law and order governor looks like. And as each of the sheriffs standing here with us today will tell you, this is what a real governor looks like, who cares more about the safety of his citizens, his cops, and his country's constitution than he does about hurting the feelings of a criminal or someone who wants to foolishly go soft on crime. And yes, this right here is what a governor looks like, that is not afraid to step up on the ledge and lead his state to be the most freedom-loving state in the United States of America. The sheriff standing here with us today, and a few who could not attend today's event because of scheduling conflicts, recognize that Governor DeSantis' support of law enforcement is why Florida's crime rate is going down, while the rest of the country faces crime rates that are rising at alarming levels. Today, more than ever before, people are moving their families, their homes, and their businesses to Florida. They are moving to our great state because they know that with Governor DeSantis at the helm, they will be safe. They can have a great education in our schools. They have amazing opportunities to grow their businesses. They can enjoy our beautiful beaches. And the only thing that is forced upon them is freedom. For those of us standing here who proudly wear this badge, we know that our governor stands with us in the fight against illegal immigration. Our governor stands with us to combat the opioid epidemic that is taking its toll on every community in America. And our governor is working hard every day to help us recruit and retain the finest law enforcement officers in the country. That's real American leadership. And folks, that's a real law and order governor. That's what they look like. And that's why all of us are standing strong and proud with Governor DeSantis as he stands strong and proud to protect all of us here in the state of Florida. It is now my honor to introduce Clay County Sheriff Michelle Cook, who is going to share with us her own personal reasons for standing strong with Governor DeSantis.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Cook, and I am honored to be the Sheriff of Clay County. One of the greatest challenges facing our country today is the ever-increasing resignation and retirement rate of experienced law enforcement officers. The threat of vocal, anti-cop radicals coupled with stagnated wages can force even the most dedicated officer to reconsider his or her career path. While some politicians have chosen to remain silent or even lend their voice to those demanding the defunding of police, Governor Ron DeSantis has shown his support for law enforcement in a tangible way. Thanks to Governor DeSantis, every sworn officer in the great state of Florida recently received a $1,000 bonus, and the governor has indicated his support to provide additional incentives to help attract new officers to Florida and help retain those who already serve here. This type of support not only helps our officers financially, but it increases morale as Florida officers recognize that our governor has our backs. Governor DeSantis, thank you for your continued commitment to supporting Florida law enforcement and for giving our officers the tools that they need to better serve their communities. Now, before I introduce the next speaker, I would ask you to be especially encouraging and kind to him. He is a bit of an introvert and does not often speak in a public setting. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my sincere honor to introduce to you a fine sheriff and a great man, Sheriff Grady Judd of Polk County.
Thank you, Sheriff. I got up early this morning and I've taken several deep breaths. I think I can make it through this. It's truly my honor to be the sheriff from the state of Florida. You know, leadership starts with the governor. Leaders start from the front of the pack. We've seen far too many leaders in government across this nation who wanted to be politically correct, who wanted to be followers, not leaders. When you look at Portland, Oregon, you look at Seattle, Washington, you look at Baltimore and Chicago, you say, why is crime up? Why is the fear of crime through the roof? Why is there panic? It's because who they elect to local office, who allows that to occur, who does not support law enforcement officers. Ladies and gentlemen, when you saw the burning in Portland, you didn't see that here. When you saw the burning in the big cities across the United States, you didn't see that here. What you saw was a governor who stepped up And he said, not in Florida. As a result, in the last 2 years, 48,000 people have moved to my county alone. And as I move through the people of the community, they say, Sheriff, there's 2 reasons I moved to Florida. I was going to retire and I didn't know where to go other than I'm in Polk County. You know why? It's because Governor DeSantis and Grady Judd. I'll bet you each of these sheriffs standing here today can tell you the same story. Sheriff, we moved to your county because of you and Governor Ron DeSantis. You're safe in Florida. Why people in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle are waking up wondering if their cars are in the driveway, whether they're going to have a burglary, whether you're going to be assaulted. When you wake up in Florida, you go, I have a day off. Let's see, Disney World or the beaches? That's the difference. You know, I've got to tell you, beyond and to the exclusion of every doubt, I've been in law enforcement my entire adult career. And we've had good leaders in Florida. And we have good leaders in Florida. But we've never had a governor like we have today that goes out on the edge and says, I'm the defender of all the people in the state of Florida. I'm going to make sure there's a safe environment and you feel safe so that you can prosper. And that's what happens in Florida. But it doesn't happen without the leader at the head of all leaders in the state. It is my honor to introduce to you my governor, Ron DeSantis, and the governor of the state of Florida.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much. The sheriffs here in the state of Florida are absolutely outstanding. Every single community in Florida, the sheriffs play a very special role. Obviously, they're there to protect the public, but people look at their sheriffs for guidance. They respect them, and they are some of the most important constitutional officers we have in our entire state. And so I'm honored to be able to be here today and accept the support of so many of Florida sheriffs. And Sheriff Judd mentioned it. You look around the country, it's a much different picture where we see crime absolutely skyrocketing through the roof. That didn't just happen by accident. You know, that happened because you had communities across the country, particularly over the last couple years, who turned their back on law enforcement, who took funding away from law enforcement, and the result was predictable, that you gave criminals the upper hand, and you see crime skyrocketing out of control. You also see prosecutors who've been elected in places throughout this country, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in other cities in the United States, who believe that they should just not prosecute certain crimes. And so if you're in San Francisco, they just go rob the stores. If you don't rob over 1,000, then you're able to just rob your local retail store. That has no place in the state of Florida. And so we're proud to be able to be here standing shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement. And you know, when they were having that big debate about defunding law enforcement, that was obviously something I spoke out about. We actually passed a law in Florida that said, we're not going to let local government defund law enforcement. We'll put the money back in. They try to do that here. And that was an important debate. And so when we then turned to do bonuses last year, while everybody else was seemingly in these big areas were trying to cut, the people that got those bonuses, which is every sworn law enforcement officer in the state of Florida, they obviously, everyone wants the money. I mean, like, it's not like you're getting wealthy being in law enforcement. You know, these are people that are having to make ends meet. And so that made a difference. But they were much more happy about it because it showed that the state of Florida had their back. To be able to get a check from the state of Florida saying, thanks for standing on that wall for us, we're here to support you, made all the difference. And so in those communities where they're cutting law enforcement funding, of course that's not good, but what makes it even worse is the signal that it sends. They are not supported in those communities. So why the hell are you gonna risk your life when you're not gonna have any support from the community and from the political leadership? In Florida, we recognize people who are risking their lives to be able to protect the public, and we've got your back, and we'll continue to have your back. And you know, it's fine to say that, And honestly, just saying that is better than what a lot of these elected officials have been doing over the past couple years. But you also have to take actions to show that you mean it. And yes, we've done that, whether it was preventing the defunding of local law enforcement, whether it's increasing penalties for rioters that attack law enforcement, whether it was the $1,000 bonuses. And as good as all that stuff is, we've really only just begun. Right now in the legislative session, the Florida House is working on a bill that's incorporating what I had suggested last year and even building upon it. So yes, we want $5,000 signing bonuses for anybody who's qualified from out of state to come in, or for people that are new to the profession in state, because we want this to be a profession that people can be proud of. And in Florida, by giving those $5,000 bonuses, yes, it's good financially for these folks, but we're telling you we're doing this because you're entering a noble endeavor, and we support what you're doing. We're also looking to have law enforcement academy scholarships for people. We do great programs like Bright Futures. If you want to go to the University of Florida, Florida State, UNF, great. I'm a big supporter of that. But let's give the support for people who are going in this different path. And so I think that's going to be something that's going to make a big difference. And we're going to be defraying the cost up to $1,000 for people that are transferring and out of state. Any type of certification training, we'll be able to reimburse those. And give the legislature credit. They've not only taken what I had advocated for, they're actually adding to it. In the state of Florida, under the bill that's currently in front of the Florida House, any law enforcement family will be able to access our family empowerment school choice scholarships. You know, those are mostly targeted for lower income families, as well they should be. But you know, if you're in law enforcement, it ain't like you're high on the hog. You know, you're not poor, but you're not high on the hog. Opening those scholarships up is going to be great for a lot of families throughout the state of Florida. The legislature is also recommending and strongly encouraging school districts to have programs in the middle and high schools so that the students can be exposed to careers in law enforcement and learn more about the justice system. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of bad media. There's a lot of people that try to attack law enforcement. So being able to expose our students to what these folks and their deputies go through, as well as the local municipal police departments, I think it's going to cause more people to want to go into it, which is good. But I think even bigger than that, you know, it's really going to make these young people appreciate the sacrifices that go in to supporting our safety. You can have the freest state in the country, and we are that, and you see that. Even the people that criticize Florida for having been open and kids in school, you know, they'll advocate these lockdown policies. Then you find them on the beach in Miami somewhere the minute they get out. You'll have governors who'll lock down their state, and then they end up down here. Mayors have done the same thing. And so people vote with their feet. It's not just the people moving in here. It's some of the biggest critics of the state who still manage to find their way to the state of Florida. And so that is just about respecting the Constitution. It's about respecting people's individual freedoms. And it's about really targeting response to things like COVID, you know, by helping elderly people with medications, vaccines, whatever they needed. That's what we did. But we were not going to deny people the ability to earn a living, or businesses the ability to operate, or kids the ability to be in school in person. And that has been very, very significant. You look at our budget, massive surplus, like we've never seen before. They just increased the estimates over and above what my budget called for. So instead of a $15 billion surplus for this fiscal year, you're going to end up maybe $17 billion surplus. Out of a $100 billion budget, that ain't bad. Imagine if Washington was able to manage the money like Florida was doing. We'd be in a lot better shape. So all that's important. So all of that is important, but none of that would amount to anything if you saw chaos on the streets like you see in Portland and Chicago and some of these other places. You don't have freedom without the rule of law and without people enforcing law and order. And so that is what we're standing for here in the state of Florida. There's a lot of different places around this country that have gone in different directions. Heck, there's people in this state that would love to take our state in different directions. And what we're here to say, standing shoulder to shoulder with some of our great public servants, is not on our watch. We're going to keep this a free state, and we are going to keep this a law and order state. So thank you for your support, and God bless you. Okay, we have, I can take a couple questions from anybody. Yes, ma'am. So, the issue about, because you have such demand to live here, you've seen huge increases in property values. I think about, we had a place, and when we got married, my wife and I in 2009, we bought a place in Ponte Vedra Beach. And that was the bottom of the market. And then when we moved to Tallahassee for the governor thing, we didn't know, we have young kids, are we going to go back? So we decided to sell it. We made a lot of money. But if I had just left it vacant and just paid them, I would have made so much more money because everything's gone up. So part of this, I think, is just the fact that, there's strong demand to live in the state of Florida. And most Floridians, the number one asset that they have is their home. So we have a lot of elderly people who've paid off their homes and have been in there, and then they now have an asset that is worth a lot more than it was just a couple years ago. I don't think that that's being driven by speculation like it was in 2007, 8, 9 when the whole market crashed. I think there's just authentic demand to be able to live in Florida. And so it's good for homeowners when it goes up. It's a lot difficult for people that are buying. And then, of course, that trickles into renting homes, renting apartments, and all these other things. And so what we've done, really, since I've been governor, we've fully supported funds for our affordable housing programs. I mean, there are incentives so that people are able to build apartments and things like that that are multifamily that allow people, particularly who are in the workforce, to be able to do. And so we have that in our budget. I imagine that the legislature is going to continue. Now, there also has had, and I don't know the exact figure, but it's certainly hundreds of millions of dollars that's been dispersed with rental assistance, mostly coming from some of the federal COVID money. And so that has gone through our Department of Children and Families, and it's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. But this is not something that is new to us. We've always supported those programs. I did hundreds of millions of dollars from the first COVID bill to help people who were doing that. And I think it is important because you have a lot of opportunities in the workforce right now because the economy is doing well. With all the problems in the economy nationally, we're really fighting against a lot of difficult headwinds. And the inflation that you're seeing, it's not 6 or 7%. It is way more than that. If you look at different things like how much it costs for gas, how much some of the core food items have gone up, you look at materials for anything but homes. I had to go back, our budget last year that I signed, we funded a lot of big projects. We've had to go back in this budget and put huge amounts of money for those same projects because the cost has gone up so much. So yes, we're going to do things to be able to address that in this year's legislative session. But just understand, these inflationary policies are whacking families across the board. And it's all being created by bad federal policies. They overstimulated, they overprinted, and they over-borrowed. And the thing is, they wanted to do more. They actually want to do another trillion and a half, $2 trillion. That will just exacerbate. That is not going to stop or mitigate the inflation. And so you got to have stable prices because if not, it's basically like a reduction in people's real income. You can have gotten a 5 or 6% pay increase in 2021, and you still may have lost ground because of all the inflation that they're doing. So what we've tried to tell people in D.C. is stop the madness. Stop doing this. Stop digging the hole that is causing all these inflationary policies to really whack people across the board. But that is reflected in every single thing throughout our economy. And as I said, in many of the core things that people need, much more than 6 or 7%. Yes, ma'am. Well, they've been messing with our monoclonal antibodies for months and months. You remember in Jacksonville, this was the first place we started a clinic. And the reason was you get a surge in hospital admissions because of the Delta. and nobody was getting treatment before they were being admitted. And we said, well, wait a minute, this is something that's good. So once we started getting people to come here, you'd have hundreds of people come every day. You started to see those hospital admissions fall off a cliff. After we had a couple weeks of success with it, the Fed seized control and cut Florida's monoclonal antibody allotment. And I had to do a deal with another company to paper over the shortage. Fortunately, we had some of the lowest COVID prior to Omicron in the country, so even with the drastic cuts, we were able to meet the demand. Here's the problem, and so they've always been playing games with this. The problem when you say that, one, it's not effective against Omicron, we don't think it's been proven that. We think there's indications that it's not as effective as it was against Delta. We've also had other people that have gone and have had their symptoms resolved. The problem is, though, is if somebody's high risk and they're going in, you don't know necessarily if it's Omicron or not. Now, in Florida, it probably is because we already went through a Delta. In some of the northern states, it's a little bit more of a divide, I think. You have more Delta there. So I think it's something that you want to be able to have available. What are they keeping it for? I mean, you don't know what's going to come down the pike. And fortunately, with Omicron, it is much, much less virulent than Delta was. And that's very clear in all the data. That's very clear in the hospitalization rates, and it's very clear in the mortality rates. And so I think that this should be something that's available. And if people don't believe that it's something that's likely to be effective for them, then obviously don't do it. But someone goes in that's high risk, you have to do certain sequencing just to even know whether they have Delta or whether they have Omicron. And again, most likely in Florida, it is Omicron, which is actually, that change to Omicron is basically moving it to something that's going to be more endemic, and it's going to be treated most likely just like other coronaviruses are. Where, prior to COVID-19, we didn't really think that much about the coronaviruses that were circulating. So hopefully that's what's happening. I think we'll know more as we get in the spring. I mean, clearly it's peaked in many parts of the country, including Florida, and is going down. You're going to likely see something happen in the spring. We usually get a little bit of a bump, not like we get in the summer. And so that'll be telling to see what's on the horizon with that. But to the extent it's becoming much more contagious, but then very muted in terms of the lethality compared to Delta, that is the type of thing that you want to be able to have. So, but I just want to say, I want to thank people in law enforcement for what they've done over the past 2 years to help response efforts, with COVID. I mean, when people needed help, you had law enforcement there. That was why I thought it was so offensive that there were some that wanted to fire cops due to these COVID vaxes, because a lot of these cops that already had COVID, a lot of them were exposed to COVID knowingly because they were helping other people. But anytime we needed something, it was really our first responders. The firefighters were great, EMTs. But really our law enforcement was there every step of the way, and we relied on them for a lot of different things to support. I remember Jacksonville, you go back to March of 2020 when we did the National Guard out here, was doing the testing. We had the law enforcement out there. We had other folks out there. Then as we did the vax distribution, and then anything we've asked for with monoclonals or any of that, they've always been there for that. And that just shows you when other people may not want to be in the mix, and when other people were working from home or doing whatever, these guys are out on the street. They can't keep the public safe on Zoom calls. They actually have to be out there doing their job. And so that's what they did, and you never heard a peep out of them complaining or anything. It's like, put me in, coach. They wanted to be there because they know that that's their responsibility. And so I just think, I look around and when you see some of the stuff that's gone out about some of the first responders negatively over the years, I just think about, like, anytime anything happens, these are the guys that are there. Fire as well. These folks are there, and they put their heart and soul into helping people that are in need, and that's, to me, a noble endeavor. It's a noble calling, and it is why we are so supportive of what they do. So thank you all. God bless everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you.